Some of our most interesting and mysterious stories have come from China, where secrecy is a national pastime. This next video is intriguing in two ways, and it presents a pair of riddles that may or may not be connected. August 2020, it's rush hour on a stormy day in Xinjiang City in northeast China. A motorist has his camera focused on a large residential building that is under construction. Suddenly, we see something flying into the frame, towards and then behind the building. Suddenly, the building is engulfed in a massive fireball. Let's see that again. The object appears to be a huge flying creature of some sort. As the flash recedes, we see the flying object continue its path away from the building, which amazingly remains intact. Once the video goes viral, it sparks wild internet speculation about fire-breathing dragons.
When we're faced with a video that suggests that something like a dragon flew over China and breathed fire, so many people are willing to jump on that bandwagon. That says a lot about human beings, both good and bad.
Modern-day encounters with what some feel are flying dinosaurs like the pterosaur, which boasted a 30-foot wingspan, are not uncommon in some parts of the world.
I've interviewed dozens of eyewitnesses who swear that they've seen these living pterosaur creatures flying around in modern times. In Papua New Guinea, they're known as the ropin.
The ropin, also known as the demon flyer, is said to be a monstrous creature that's terrified the natives of Papua New Guinea, which is further south on the Pacific Rim than China. In 1986, a man was even said to have been killed by a ropin and eaten in front of his fellow villagers.
While it seems highly improbable that these animals could still be around, there are many sightings and accounts, and I think we can't totally rule out the possibility.
But even if we entertain the notion that this could be a relic pterosaur, that wouldn't explain the massive explosion. Some internet sleuths put forward another theory involving secret Chinese laser weapons. As recently as July of 2021, a research team in Shanghai announced they had achieved a technological breakthrough that will allow them to build the most powerful laser on the planet. Remember, we have two questions to answer here. Not only what caused that big flash, but what was that thing we see in the air? And just so you know, we tried tracking down whoever shot the video with no luck, which is always reason to ask if the footage is even real. So, our experts have plenty to sort out. Let's get to it. Our wildlife biologist, Dr. Stephanie Schuttler, considers whether or not the flying dino theory has wings.
It doesn't seem to be actively flying. It seems to be gliding. We don't really see any movement of the wings at all.
Dr. Schuttler also notices another key detail when she zooms in on the image.
And it doesn't seem to have like a center body shape at all. So I don't think it's an animal of any sort. It could be like a piece of tarp or a very big piece of plastic or something like that floating in the wind.
So the flying object is confounding us so far, but what about the flash? Maybe it's separate from the object. Our military expert, Tim McMillan, addresses the theory that it's from a space-based laser, maybe a test.
Some of the challenges that any type of laser is going to face is atmospheric refraction. In this video, we see rain, we see haze, fog. All of that is going to greatly reduce any energy any type of laser is going to have. And so you're not going to get an explosion from a laser. So I can say we're not looking at a laser weapon here.
Interesting fact, it was just announced that the U.S. is developing a laser weapon to shoot down the new Chinese hypersonic missiles we mentioned earlier. But that would be used in space, where atmospheric refraction isn't a factor. So it all comes down to video forensic expert Michael Primo. He notices that the flying object seems to have passed the building before the fireball.
Based on this flight path alone, it does not appear that this object created or caused this explosion in this way.
Primo also finds a telltale sign that the video may have been doctored.
At frame 8740, there is a white flash that occurs across the whole screen right before the alleged explosion. So this appears to be a spot where whoever created this recording intentionally avoided the opportunity to see an edit to deceive the viewer.
After further analysis, we also uncovered a report released by Chinese state media that cites the cause of the massive fireball as a random bolt of lightning striking a high-voltage power line near an unfinished residential compound. So, we know what caused the flash. It was lightning striking nearby power lines. That doesn't explain what was flying around before the lightning strike. But thanks to our ace forensic video expert, we're confident declaring that part of the video a pianju. That's Chinese for hoax. November 2015. It appears to be business as usual at a hospital in China's Hubei province as a 53-year-old man prepares to undergo a medical procedure. A monitor is showing the live feed from inside the patient on the table. It is then that what they are looking at and trying to extract is revealed. Check this out. The object remarkably resembles an egg, white, oval, and nestled perfectly inside the patient's stomach. And if it is an egg, what's going to hatch?
There's a long-standing idea that exists within the UFO community that aliens from another world will often abduct people and implant eggs inside them for the purpose of breeding some future alien hybrid race. We do also see incidents where people claim to have alien implants inside them. There was a famous doctor who performed surgeries on people who claimed to have been abducted by aliens and implanted with strange objects inside their body.
Many patients who claim to have alien implants say the objects were metal, possibly used for tracking or monitoring. But this egg-like object certainly looks organic. Let's see how our experts diagnose the situation. Our zoologist, Roxy Furman, has seen a lot of strange, natural occurring phenomena, but she's never seen anything quite like this.
It looks like it could be an egg, but later on they actually have the object and they've kind of dissected it and cut it into slices. It doesn't have any of the physical properties of an egg in terms of the layers. It looks artificial, maybe some sort of gelatin or something.
And where this thing was found is also key.
It's very unlikely that something like that could grow in a human stomach. It's full of different acids and chemical compounds that break down food, not nurture growth. So it's highly unlikely that something would be in there thriving and growing.
Professor of biology Floyd Hayes thinks there is a much more down-to-earth explanation for this man's condition.
So it appears to me that this is basically masses of fatty tissue that accumulate. They're relatively soft. They are benign. When they grow large like this, they could be problematic in that they could press against various organs that could cause pain.
After the analysis, we did some digging, and it turns out this isn't the first of its kind. In 2013, a 62-year-old man had a similar growth removed at a hospital in Washington, D.C. The mass measured about 3.34 inches at its midline and weighed about ½ a pound, making it the largest specimen of its kind.
We're not really certain why these appear. There's at least one gene that has been found to be associated with the growth. There's also some evidence that they may result from traumatic injuries.
So, our verdict. This is a biological phenomenon, a mixture of fat and tissue that grew naturally in this man's bodily fluid. The origin of this video is undetermined. We believe it's from China. Watch closely. A man walks into this driveway. After he's struck by lightning, incredibly, he gets up and then a double lightning strike. Amazing. And in August 2020, another stunning video. This truck in Thailand gets stuck on some overhead wires. When the driver gets out, he's in for a shock. Look again. As we push in and slow down, the man literally catches fire and collapses. But the craziest thing is, he survived with only minor burns.
The questions that pop into my mind, how could he survive something like that?
Professor Diana Pasulka says massive electrocutions are known to do strange things to people. For one thing, lightning strikes often leave bizarre markings called Lichtenberg figures on people's flesh. There are people who seem to develop electroimmunity, like this man in India, who brags about an ability to withstand lethal levels of electricity. And Pasulka has even heard of one survivor who later developed a peculiar talent.
She had this very sad and burdensome skill of identifying when plane crashes are going to happen. So I think that we have to think about these people who survive these kinds of terrible electrocutions as definitely superhumans in one sense.
Nearly 250,000 people get hit by lightning each year. Their injuries depend in part on where the strike hits them and how the jolt moves through their body. But it's rare for these incidents to be caught on camera. So is this footage real? And can it tell us anything about whether these people have an extraordinary ability to resist a massive electrical charge? Let's take our video to the experts. Our atmospheric scientist, Dr. Deanna Hens, says the alleged China footage raises some red flags.
It is interesting that this person is struck by lightning in the middle of the street when there's lots and lots and lots of much taller objects on all sides of them. That would have to be an incredible stroke of bad luck to still be struck by lightning in the middle of this relatively narrow street.
And the footage is sending science writer Mick West into full debunking mode.
The suspicious thing here is that it doesn't like the tops of the trees, and this shadow here remains the same.
With a few keystrokes, he shows us how the lightning was inserted.
What if I take this particular frame and just give an exposure modification to it? So I did that, and we basically get the same image, and then just draw some kind of jaggy line like this. Take that and blur it.
But he believes the Thai footage is for real, despite the theatrical way the victim collapses.
When he fell over, that looked very strange because he just kind of went stiff and then fell over. But that's actually what happens. It looks very unnatural.
So if this footage is real, does this flaming man have a superhuman power? And how does India's Electro Man do it? West says that special power is like beauty. It's skin deep.
There are some people who have essentially thicker, drier skin than other people, which means their skin has more resistance, because for electricity to be transmitted in the human body, it generally needs some kind of moisture, like water. It's almost like you're wearing a set of extra gloves.
So here's where we're ending up. The China video is a straight-up hoax. Please, the shadows gave it away. But the Thai video is real, and it does suggest that some people can take massive jolts of electricity, possibly because of their skin. Our verdict? It may be a rare physical trait. November 2015. Just a typical day of rush hour traffic in the Chinese city of Xingtai. Then this. Take a closer look. Two vans jump in the air and appear to suddenly defy gravity.
The van topples over as it hits the ground, and nobody knows what happened. It's totally freaky, doesn't make any sense.
But it's not just the laws of gravity that seem to be bending. In July 2020, a photo surfaced on the internet that shows the impossible.
Now this one really is weird. One of the girls, her facial expression in the mirror is different from her actual facial expression. Something like this can't be real, right?
What is going on here? Has reality suddenly gone off the rails? Physicist Dr. Michio Kaku explains that some believe it's proof our world is actually an elaborate computer simulation.
The fundamental premise of the simulation theory is that there's a mysterious, super advanced civilization that runs computer programs to simulate reality itself. They can create a world that's totally fake.
How would an alien civilization be able to generate our reality with such detail? Maybe we only need to look to our own technological advances.
In the 70s, we were playing Pong on a black and white TV. Now we have virtual reality. If we are capable of this kind of technological advancement, then an alien race that's millions of years, ahead of us could create simulations that we can't even touch yet.
So when a car mysteriously jumps in midair or a mirror shows a wrong reflection, simple, it's a glitch in the alien's computer code.
Not everything you see is always working the way it should. The computer's frozen, and some people perceive this phenomenon as proof that this is a glitch in the matrix.
Now, if you believe we're not alone, and you believe technology advances exponentially, it follows that an alien civilization may well have evolved to the point that they're running lots of big simulations, and we're living in one of them. But are these images proof or not? We first sent the bizarre video of the car to science writer and forensic video analyst Mick West.
My first thought was perhaps there was some kind of water main break and the water was rushing up underneath his car and pushing it up into the air.
West zooms in on the video. There's clearly no water seen underneath the cars, but he does find a clue in how the van jumps in the air.
It kind of jerks and then it's suspended. The only plausible thing that could hold up something like that is a rope or a cable or a chain.
Okay, if we're looking for a cable or chain, I don't see anything. But West says take a closer look at the right-hand side of the screen. See that large vehicle between the two cars?
There's a street sweeper going by, kind of about the same time that they get raised up into the air.
West did some more digging. Turns out this street sweeper is the key to the mystery.
What actually happened was there was a cable lying on the street, and this cable got tangled up in this street sweeper, and it pulled the cars up into the air. And because the video is very low quality, you can't see this.
So chalk one up for everyday reality. But what about the photo of the girl in the mirror? We ask our other forensic video analyst, Michael Primo, to take a look.
So I began my investigation by examining what's referred to as the metadata information. This particular image, I noted several consistencies with what I would expect to see as an original. I noticed no inconsistencies in the digital information.
Primo confirms the file is a camera original, but could the face in the reflection have been digitally manipulated after the photo was taken?
I look for any kind of inconsistencies in directionality of light, any kind of inconsistencies in the actual compression blocks, which is a X-ray version of the picture, which looks for areas of the image that have been copied over, duplicated, cloned, etc.
Here's where it gets freaky.
We would expect to see some sort of pasting of these two faces, but I do not detect any evidence of tampering of any kind. This is likely what actually was being documented in real life.
So it turns out those cars and vans can be explained pretty simply. Our verdict there, a tangled cable. But the examination of that photo is rock solid. There was no digital trickery, and who knows? It could be evidence that this reality is not really real. Our verdict on the photo, unexplained phenomenon. With a length of nearly 4,000 miles, the Yangtze is the third longest river in the world. Its waters are home to several unique aquatic species. But in September 2019, a viral video captures an image of something unprecedented. Taken from a ferry dock, the video captures what looks like a mysterious creature slithering along the surface of the water. You can't see a head, but that sure looks like a powerful tail. And eyeballing its size relative to its distance from the dock and the height of this man observing the scene, it appears to be at least 10 feet long. Once the video goes viral, it racks up tens of millions of views, and a new legend is born.
People dubbed the creature the Three Gorges water monster. Some have speculated that this creature could actually be a giant water snake or eel of some kind that has mutated and become huge thanks to pollution.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt has extensively studied many of the legendary beasts said to inhabit the waterways of China.
In this part of the world, there are legends of mythical serpent-like creatures. You have the dragons known as the Lung, which are described as huge and serpentine and scaly, with 4 stubby limbs, each with 5 claws. There's also the Naga, described as dark and serpentine, up to 40 feet in length.
So what is this mysterious object slithering through the water? It doesn't seem to be tied to anything towing it along. What does that mean? Let's check with our experts. First, we take the video to our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger.
What we see in this video is what appears to be a pretty large animal that appears to have some sort of a tail that's moving back and forth.
Dr. Conger's first guess is that this might be some kind of large eel, but the largest known eel, coincidentally called the European conger, has never been sighted in these waters.
I don't think there's species of eel that are as large as this in the area.
Conger says when it comes to endemic Yangtze River creatures, there are plenty of cool candidates.
One of the unique animals to the area is the giant salamander. It can get up to 6 feet long and weigh over 100 pounds. but I don't think this is a giant salamander because it has a lot of irregularities on the top of it. And if this were a type of salamander, we would expect this would be kind of a smooth animal with a smoother, longer tail moving through the water.
Dr. Conger wonders if this might be the elusive Chinese sturgeon, which can reach lengths of 16 feet.
They evolved over 100 million years ago, so they're, in essence, living prehistoric animals. However, sturgeon have really defined tail fins that would be sticking above the surface of the water. And because I don't see that type of fin or tail, I can conclude this probably isn't a sturgeon.
So could it just be a hoax? We ask our resident video forensic expert, Michael Primo.
I don't see any major splicing that took place throughout this object as it's swimming, if you will. I do not believe that this recording has been doctored or manipulated with malicious intent.
But Primo digs deeper and finds a telltale sign that things may not be as they seem.
When we look at the ripples as this object is traveling through the water, there is no definitive pattern as it's traveling through the water that we would expect to see from something that we know is like a fish or a shark. There are some unnatural behaviors. Upon further investigation, we came across this recording that is allegedly a dark-colored rubber airbag.
Primo suggests that's not a tail propelling a creature through the water, just a strong Yangtze current moving one end of the big airbag back and forth.
So it is possible that this is what we were actually seeing in the river, and it wasn't actually some sort of river monster.
So, about the theory that the Yangtze River monster was created by pollution. Turns out that's true. But it's not an overgrown snake. It's a long black rubber industrial airbag, likely discarded by a nearby shipyard. But still, there is a lesson here. More and more of the Yangtze's unique aquatic life is going extinct due to pollution and overfishing. In July of 2017 in Zhuhai, China, it's a typical day as a motorist drives through a quiet parking lot. There's nothing to indicate that a potentially deadly tragedy is seconds away. Watch close on the right of the security footage as the car seems to hit a bump. And suddenly we see a child emerge from under its wheel. The car stops, but incredibly, the child seems to walk away unharmed. A similar miraculous video emerged from Nanjing, China in 2016. And yet another in Mumbai, India in 2018. Author Alexis Brooks says there have been actual documented cases of humans born with nearly indestructible bones, including a man in 1994 who walked away from a near-fatal car crash virtually unharmed.
The x-rays showed that he had negligible injuries, and the doctors, of course, scratched their head. They discovered that he had a very rare bone mutation. His bone density was actually 8 times more dense than the average human beings. When the doctors told the man of what they found, he said, "That doesn't surprise me at all. It's no wonder I've never been able to stay afloat when I try to swim."
Researchers at the Yale Bone Center later discovered the man wasn't the only one with these near indestructible bones. Do these kids have the same condition? There are a few open questions here. First, are these videos real or hoaxes? And if they are real, how did these kids survive? Let's turn to our experts. Video forensic expert Michael Primo runs tests on the video from Zhuhai, comparing it to what another camera recorded from an overhead angle.
From these two different perspectives, there is a consistency between how the vehicle travels from its passenger front side tire and its passenger rear side tire as it travels over the subject. Would that be difficult to manufacture the vehicle's movements over the subject? Yes.
So we're going to say this video is real, but physics professor Michio Kaku says in a small, almost miraculous number of cases, it may not require superhuman bones for children to walk away.
We think of the kid as like a small adult. So you realize that the laws of physics apply differently to the child. The child has a much smaller height off the ground. This car goes over the child very quickly, minimizing the energy transfer to the child, while an adult would have sustained maximum damage.
Dr. Kaku explains this in terms most drivers can understand.
When a car goes over a twig, the twig hardly notices at all. Doesn't necessarily break, because the time of impact is so tiny and the energy transfer to the twig is almost minimal. But think of a car going over a log.
The log is much taller than the twig and thus creates much more sudden vertical force between the car and the log.
The energy transfer is much greater, there's much more damage.
So, our verdict. The videos are real. And these children were likely spared by physics and tremendous good fortune. However, the vast majority of children in this situation would not survive. So always, always drive carefully and keep your kids out of traffic.